Welcome back to the drive to Dayton. I'm just going to get this out the way early. We will be without our anchor, our MVP, the one and only Kurt Stubbs. He will be very missed. Unfortunately, Kurt moved on to he wants to start a full-time wrestling podcast, and he is going to be full-time down on the tracks watching racing. So I'm just kidding. Stubbs has some other stuff going on. He will be greatly missed, but the show must go on, and you guys are stuck with me and Roth. So what we're going to do, guys, is each week we want to have a new guest on, whether it's somebody also in the media realm or a high school coach, college coach. We're going to do a good job of mixing it up. As usual, we want to get some fan interaction from you guys. I think moving forward, me and Roth are going to have like a kind of like a question, like a fan mail type of section, where we take a few questions from our loyal viewers and kind of give you some insight on from two guys that watch way too much basketball. But yeah, salute to Kurt Stubbs. He will be missed. But with that being said, me and Roth, we kicked off the high school season. We actually had the same schedule, which happens more times than I would probably like. Not only do I have to see this guy once a week on the show, but I have to see him usually 2 to 3 times a week at games. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I'm just kidding. But yeah, Roth, we were down in Cincinnati for the Ohio Valley Hoops Classic. And then we both turned around and went to the All Ohio Hoops Showcase at Reynoldsburg on Saturday. For November, I think we got some good basketball. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was decent basketball at both locations. You saw a couple more games than me, as you were also at Midview on Wednesday, but I thought the crowds were pretty decent, especially the last couple games at Reynoldsburg. And yeah, we got some decent hoops, and I'm excited to break it down. So let's just get right into it. At the Ohio Valley Hoops Classic in Mason, my first game of the year, we saw Lakota East defeat Goshen. Goshen was a team that won 20 games last year. They got three pretty intriguing players, but they were no match for Clint Atkins' group, as they're going to be a pain to deal with in the GMC. Trey Perry and senior Michael Akindele, I believe is how you pronounce that, each scored 22 points as the Thunderhawks get off to a 1-0 start. Other games of note on Friday, St. Xavier, they went 2-0. They played both days. They defeated Kettering Fairmont in a competitive game. Evan Gentili made 4 3-pointers, scored 20 points, but it was not enough. The Bombers are led by seniors Jacob Wassler and Donovan Walaskowski. And they also got a couple multi-sport athletes. Braden Riley and Liam McGeady are players to watch. Riley, a Division I football recruit, did a great job defensively, making Gentili work for every bucket he had in the second half. And Liam McGeady is a forward with size. He can shoot the basketball. He moves well. He's a big time baseball player as well. So those are some players to watch for Cincinnati St. Xavier, who had a fast start to their season. Then in the most anticipated game, maybe of the whole weekend for me and you, Richmond Heights, they flat out ran Kettering Alter out the gym in a battle between defending state champions. Alter shot just 32% from the floor and 22% from three. I thought Dorian Jones and Damaris Winters were fantastic defensively on Friday night. They made it really difficult for Alter to get any open looks. They were rushing their shots. And once they got the ball, either after a defensive rebound or a steal, they were looking to push. And Joey Emery played with a ton of confidence on Friday night. He had a big game. And Richmond Heights, I mean, they looked fantastic on Friday.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit. I believe it was either at halftime or once the game was over. This team is very reminiscent of the Richmond Heights team that we saw 2 years ago, where they had, Hosea Steele, I believe, would have been a junior, the same trio of Division I guys that they have now. But man, when they can just five out, dribble, drive, draw two, kick, shoot the ball. I believe they made like 14 threes against Kettering Alter. This looked like the Richmond Heights team that we all fell in love with 2 years ago in terms of just the continuity, the ball movement. how well they played together. I didn't think the ball was sticking. They looked like they had a lot more flow than what we saw last year at times. So yeah, it was nice to see those guys kind of get back in that groove and find a rhythm again.
Yeah, and they really tore apart the zone defense. If you're not able to keep them in front of you, I'm not sure how you're going to defend them because they shoot the ball well and they actually move it really well against the zone. And then on Saturday, we were both up in Columbus, but want to shout out a couple teams for some big wins. Cincinnati, Wyoming, and Summit Country Day. They both beat powerhouses from Columbus. Cincinnati, Wyoming got a win over a young but still talented Hilliard Bradley squad. And then Summit Country Day got a victory over Harvest Prep in a battle of two of the four most talented teams in Division 5 now this season. So that's a big win for Summit Country Day to start the year. And then finally, last game I want to spotlight on Saturday, CHCA defeats Tri Village as Luke Sanders had 29 points in the win. Trey Sagister, 30 points for Tri Village in a losing effort. So that's pretty much all you need to know from Mason. I'll toss it over to you as we will break down what happened on Saturday at the All Ohio Hoop Showcase.
Yeah, before I hop into the All Ohio recap, I wanted to give a just a quick shout out to the guys over at Midview High School. So the DeFranco Classic is something that's been going on for a long time, and as someone who lives in Northeast Ohio, covers Northeast Ohio a lot, it was nice to finally be able to make my way over there. They had a 5 game slate. I want to say there was also a girls' game in the morning as well, so a total of 6 games. I was able to see like the second half of Amherst Steel and North Olmsted, which was a good game. Lyria Catholic and Olmsted Falls was competitive. I want to give a quick shout out to Olmsted Falls, man. I haven't seen those guys play since I think 2019 when Eric Hanna and company were seniors and they made a deep push in the state tournament. But man, that coach has been there a really long time, and his teams just play a really good brand of basketball. Like anytime I watch them, regardless of how much talent they have or how little talent they have, you know exactly what you're going to get. They play hard, they compete, they move the ball, and they're going to have one or two guys that can just flat out make shots. I want to say they had a senior named Ryan Reich or Rach. He hit 5 threes in the second half, which was really pivotal in the win. North Ridgeville kind of handed it to Lorraine in the third game. The most anticipated game of the day was Elyria and Sandusky, two teams that I think are probably two of the better teams up this way. Both you could probably make a case for being potentially top 10. I think Elyria has a lot of talent with the wings and some of the returners they have back. And it was a great game. I mean, Sandusky was up about 6 or 8 with a minute and a half left to go, and Elyria just kind of gutted out a big win. There were some missed free throws, a few turnovers by Sandusky that led to key buckets on the other side of the ball. I want to say junior wing Kendall Compton, who has quickly become one of the more talented guys in Ohio, got a go-ahead bucket, and that was all she wrote. Big game. And then lastly, Midview and Keystone was a game that I can honestly say I didn't have a ton of expectations going into it, and it ended up being really close, really fun. Sophomore at Keystone, a kid that everyone who listens to the pod should quickly try to familiarize themselves with, is sophomore Liam Gorin. Finished with 35 points for Keystone in a big win over the host school. And man, if you're somebody who just likes kids that can dribble, pass, shoot, there's no rah-rah, there's no extracurricular stuff, just somebody who's just going to flat out play the right way and score a lot of points, man. Liam Gorham was really fun to watch, and it was refreshing. And that was a day for me right before Thanksgiving. And then, obviously we ate a lot of turkey, and then we got right into it. So the All Ohio Hoop Showcase, there were a total of 12 games split between two campuses. So those who aren't familiar, Reynoldsburg has a Livingston campus and the Summit campus. Both are I think they're about 10 minutes apart from each other. There were 6 games at each location. Unfortunately, Taft and Pick North did not go down due to Taft still playing football. No further comments from me on that. But some games I do want to highlight. Huber Heights Wayne knocked off Afrocentric in a big come from behind win. This was a game that me and Roth saw the first half of before we headed over to the other gym, but the one thing that stood out to me in that first half was just how big and how long and how athletic Africentric was. This is a team that has made the Final Four, and I want to say what each of the last 3 or 4 years it feels like.
Well, they missed it last year, but yeah, with Swain, they made it back-to-back years.
Yeah, and honestly, I think with the new seven division format, this is a team that we could absolutely see make another push. A ton of dual sport guys. Josh Smith, who is also the team's starting quarterback. I thought he was really intriguing as a basketball player. Junior Rohan Hardy, who I think has got a chance to be one of the breakout names in Columbus. And just a plethora of just bodies and guys that can make plays. But Huber Heights Wayne, led by Miles Boots Perkins, who I believe finished with 25 points on the day, came back and won. Uh, Something I didn't see coming. I don't know about you, Roth, but Bishop Hartley over Pick Central was, and it's not the result that was surprising to me. It's how it happened. I believe at one point the score was like 50-19, somewhere in that realm. This was just something I did not expect from a Pick Central group, but I think that speaks volumes of what Coach Andreas James has done over at Bishop Hartley, led by the Callaway brothers. They have a mix of other guys as well.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I want to give a shout out to Caleb O'Neill. He was a kid who played in the Midwest Fall League up in Columbus, and I had never heard of him. He was pretty impressive in a couple weeks over there, and I think he hit like 6 or 7 threes against Pickerington Central. So he could be that third offensive piece that Bishop Hartley has next to the Callaway brothers, and also you got a guy like Marcus Hemphill in the paint. I mean, Bishop Hartley, we might talk about them a little later, is one of the best teams in the state for Division III.
Absolutely. The first game that me and Ralph saw when we went over to the Summit campus was we got to see a new look Akron Buchtel team take on Newark, who was without senior Braylon Morris, who's headed to Hillsdale next year. So Newark was a little, undermanned, and we got to see Buchtel, who has about 4 or 5 new faces, guys that, guys from all over, it seems like. Junior Chris Powell has been a buzzing name, definitely like in recruiting circles. I've had a lot of college coaches, other scouts, media people reach out to me about him. And I thought he kind of lived up to the hype a little bit. Really talented, 6'3" combo guard, was impressive off the dribble, made a ton of, really high level difficulty shots, was able to get downhill, make some plays. And Buchtel picked up a pretty big win over Newark on a neutral floor. Lutheran East knocked off Olentangy Liberty. Lutheran East, if I'm being honest, shout out to Coach Jones, Coach Liggins, right? Friends of the show, guys that tune in all the time. I got to see them quite a bit this summer. And I think the coaches would admit this too. Those guys struggled a bit, but it was as expected, right? They're really young. I believe their top 8 guys are a freshman, a junior, and then about 6 sophomores. So you had a really, really young group who pretty much had no experience. They had a very up and down summer. And then they turned around, man, and they knocked off Olentangy Liberty, who is probably a top 10 team in Columbus in Division One. I thought junior TJ Crumble, who I think everyone should be familiar with by now, was big time in that game. I believe he finished with 27 points and a really good matchup between him and Tyler Kropp, who's headed to Northwestern. But it was the young guys, Chris Hill, who started last year as a freshman, Dylan Ziegler, who is currently a freshman, right? One of the top names in Ohio in that class. Guys like Ty Harrison and DJ Jenkins all stepped up. And shout out to Devontae Perkins. I think he's a kid who looked night and day from where I saw him in the summer to where he's at now. So Lutheran East, as young as they are, man, they look like a team that could very easily make another push and make another run in Division Five. And Roth just gave Richmond Heights a ton of praise for how well they played against Kettering Alter on Friday. And then, man, they turned around and laid an egg against Westerville North. And it's kind of expected, right? It's early in the year. The Alter game is a really highly anticipated game. They came out with a ton of fire and really played well in that game. And then I think Westerville North did the exact same thing to them. It felt like North just kind of beat them at their own game. They were able to get out in transition, get a lot of easy scoring opportunities. and that game got out of reach quick and in a hurry. And I believe it was a running clock at some point. And then lastly, I think this turned out to be probably the most exciting game of the weekend, just off the atmosphere alone. It almost felt like a district final, regional semi type environment. And that was Reynoldsburg, the home team, taking on Toledo Whitmer, who reached the Final Four in Division One a year ago. And I want to say it was pretty evenly contested right through about midway through the second quarter. And I'm going to give a quick shout out to freshman Makai Roddy from Reynoldsburg. This kid who's in his very first game on varsity, right? True freshman, even though physically he doesn't look like a freshman. I thought this kid came out and was the X factor, in my opinion. Not only did he come in and, get a couple buckets, but just solely based off his effort, he impacted and changed that game. He was getting like a lot of offensive rebounds, just gutsy type of plays, ball pressure, forcing turnovers, getting out in transition, had a big 2-foot, two-hand dunk. The crowd went crazy. And to me, that was when the major shift in that game happened. And that was solely off the energy of Makai Roddy. And Reynoldsburg, they started off the year hot last year, with the big win over Newport. They start off the year red hot again with the big win over Toledo Whitmer. So it'll be curious to see what these guys look like. We've been talking about Reynoldsburg for a few years, whether or not they can get over the hump. They have a bunch of seniors now. These guys, we can't give them all their sophomores or all their juniors. Oh, they're a year away. There's no more years, right? These guys have to figure it out now or they don't.
Yeah, it's now or never for Reynoldsburg. And I just wanted to shout out Whitmer. I was ready to walk out the door right when the fourth quarter started. I was making my way over there and I was like, yeah, right when Reynoldsburg pushes this out to 20 points, because I think it was 16 points at that
Yep.
time, I was going to get out of there. And Whitmer made me stick around till with about 50 seconds left. They put in a great effort in the fourth quarter. And I think big transfer Justin Harrelson from Fremont Ross is going to be a kid who might change some things for Whitmer this season. Everybody knows about their guard trio of Antoine West, Makai Leach, and also Andre Young, but I think Harrelson gives them a little different dynamic, going to allow them to rebound, protect the rim, gives them size, able to defend other bigs. I thought he did a good job against Jordan Bowens, who was very quiet as a scorer. So I think Harrelson is a guy who we really need to watch out for this season. That could be a big sort of missing piece that Whitmer added.
Absolutely. And one thing I want to add to that as well. So senior Antoine West headed to Purdue, one of the top seniors in the state of Ohio. He's been dealing with like an Achilles injury. I want to say for the last few months, it's what sidelined him for all of July and for the majority of their scrimmages in the preseason. And I think it might have been bothering him again in the fourth quarter. I don't remember him playing a whole lot in the second half. But man, shout out to senior Makai Leach, who's headed to Bowling Green. I thought that kid just played. He just kept playing, kept playing, kept playing. Was able to get downhill, was able to get to the free throw line, hit a couple really big threes late in the game. And those guys, they unfortunately was just a too little, too late. But definitely a gutsy effort by them, though, something they can hang their hat on. And I was talking to one of the assistant coaches over at Toledo Whitmer, and they spoke a lot about how that environment was and how it felt like a postseason game. And they said they can't remember in the last, 5 or 6 years they played in front of a crowd like that, especially this early on in the season. So definitely a good measuring stick if you're Toledo Whitmer, right? And yeah, really big win if you're Reynoldsburg. Um, Another event that's become a staple, especially here in Northeast Ohio, is the Great Lakes Classic that goes down over at Cleveland Heights every year. They have a couple games Friday, and then they proceed to go through Saturday, Sunday with about 5 or 6 games each day. I'm just going to highlight a few wins. Not going to give them too much time because neither one of us were there. Strongsville had a pretty dominant win over Holy Name. And shout out Coach Ashton Ward, man, over at Cleveland Bill Angela St. Joe's. They were able to knock off Shaker Heights by 30. I know Shaker is a bit down, and doesn't have the talent that we've been accustomed to seeing. But man, I thought that was just a really big win for a BSJ group that has a lot of young guys on it. A game that I was looking forward to and kind of regretted that I was unable to see was Lutheran West and Youngstown Ursuline. Lutheran West picked up a big win. I think they won by about 12 to 15. Uh, Senior transfer Ryan Kalo, who came over from Menor, had 27 points in the win for Lutheran West. Lutheran East knocked off Euclid to go 2-0 on the weekend. McKinley beat the host school, Cleveland Heights, by 2. Maple Heights beat Cornerstone Christian by 25. They actually racked up 102 points in that game. And then the one kind of big takeaway for me, something that I'm going to have to look into once we get done with the show. Youngstown Cheney actually beat Elyria 49-48. Elyria, who to me is one of the more talented teams in Northeast Ohio, right? They have two surefire scholarship prospects in Jaden Crutcher and Kendall Compton. I thought junior wing Cam Bell was really good. They have a mix of other bigs, guys that come off the bench, make plays. But yeah, so shout out to Youngstown Cheney. That's a really big win for them to wrap up the Great Lakes Classic. So um, a few events that I know are going down this weekend. For those of you guys who want to get out and see a few games at once, you have the Body Armor Classic over at Indian Hill High School in Cincinnati. The Rich Kid Memorial Classic, which I would suggest if you're in the Dayton or Columbus area and you have a chance to make it over there, please do. It's for a great cause. Rich Kid was someone that I did not have the pleasure of meeting in person, but I have yet to find too many people that have had a bad thing to say about this guy. He meant a lot to a lot of kids. He passed away a few years ago. This is an event to commemorate him. It's at Centerville. You have some really good games. You got St. X against Dayton Shaman Julian, Pick Central against LaSalle, Kettering Fairmont against Dayton Dunbar, and then probably one of the better games of the weekend, you have Kettering Alter against Trotwood Madison. So definitely a good event over at Centerville. You have the Dana Young Classic at Shaker Heights. And then lastly, you have the Kingdom Classic, which last year I believe was at Ohio Dominican. This year it is at Westland High School. You have a trio of games. Walnut Ridge against Cincinnati Aiken, which I think should be really fun. Good pace to that one. Westland against Olentangy. And then lastly, you have Columbus Northland against Uchenna Academy out of Canada. I believe those two teams played last year. I believe Uchenna might have knocked off Northland early in the season a year ago. So Northland looking to get some revenge in that one. But those are just a few events to keep an eye on if you're looking to get out of the house this weekend.
Yeah, some quick news and notes about the Body Armor Classic. Last game, Indian Hill Host School. They're led by junior William Bennett and also freshman Rocco DeSanto. He was AAU teammates with Cameron Mercer, who is a star player in the 2028 class nationally. He leads Huntington Prep with a handful of other Division I guys. And then that second to last game at 3 p.m., Pike against Jeffersonville. There might be 5, 6, or 7 Division I prospects on the floor between the two teams. So that's definitely a star-studded matchup for those who just like basketball around the Cincinnati area. That's a pretty big time game. Two teams from Indiana, so it'll be interesting to see which one of those teams travels the best and gets a win on an interesting neutral court environment over at Indian Hill High School. So just one last news and note before we head into our players and teams of the week. TJ, I'll let you get started with your player of the week.
So I talked about him briefly a little bit ago, but my player of the week is going to be TJ Crumble out of Lutheran East. This is a kid who missed the second half of last season when he was at Richmond Heights as a result of transferring. He actually went back to Lutheran East for this year, and man, he did it in a pretty loud fashion, man. So he picked up back-to-back game MVP awards, right, and wins over Olentangy, Liberty, and Euclid. And on those two games, ladies and gentlemen, he averaged 24 points and 11 rebounds. Me and Roth talked about it. We actually got a chance to talk to TJ a little bit about it after the game as well. But I thought his body just looked so much better, right? This is a kid who was kind of lean, slimmed down, really toned up. And I thought that was evident in just the way he moved and how much energy he had, how he ran the floor, how he covered ground defensively. He's taken some major strides in his ability to shoot the ball. Hit a couple pick and pop jumpers, some face up 15-footers. Shout out to TJ Crumble, man. He's a guy who's going to be the kind of the elder statesman on a really, really young Lutheran East team. Um, he's going to have to lead, not only by example but with his voice as well. But yeah, I wanted to give him a quick shout out as my player of the week.
Yeah, and also, like you said, we got to talk to him. He was definitely appreciative of the kind words we gave him about what he's done with his body and the transformation he's made since the last time we both saw him in July. But also, he definitely understood some of the other feedback we gave him about his game as well, listened to what we thought about his game, which is always very appreciative. Just a mature kid who has a lot of fun out there on the basketball court. And then my player of the week is Carter Coaster from Toledo Christian. He scored a career high 44 points, was 5 of 6 from 3-point range, also grabbed 8 rebounds in a 72-52 win over Mommy. So shout out to Carter Coaster for my player of the week. And then I'll do my team of the week here. I went with Lima Central Catholic. They won the Tip-Off Classic by defeating Elida to open the season 58-52 and won the championship game over rival Lima Shawnee 66-63 in overtime. Jordan Pretty, 33 points in the win over Lima Shawnee. He won MVP honors for Lima Central Catholic, winning the Little Four-team tournament in the Lima area. So shout out Lima Central Catholic, one of the top teams in Division 7, or excuse me, Division 6 this season. So Lima Central Catholic will be a team I'm sure we'll be
Hey,
talking about throughout the year.
you guys are going to have to give us some mercy and a little grace when it comes to these divisions, man. I've been on the phone and I've been texting, quite a few high school coaches and media people and just fans of basketball across Ohio. And we'll be discussing a team or a kid, and somebody will ask me what division they're in, and I'm at the point, guys, where I don't even know for about half these guys, and it's my job to know. So that's I will get better. Roth is probably one step ahead of me as far as that goes, but we will get better together. But yeah, just give us some grace, give us a little bit of slack as we navigate this new 7 division format. It's a lot, so it's something we're all going to have to get used to. Right or wrong, regardless of how you feel about it, it's here now. We just have to make do. With that being said, my team of the week, I went with Westerville North. For them to beat Richmond Heights, right, I think is, not too surprising of a result. But like I mentioned earlier, like it was a running clock at one point. I thought the senior backcourt of Ty Perkins and Micah Young were really good, particularly on the defensive end of the floor. But I thought they received really big contributions from big. He's a senior. Nolan, is it Fadak? I thought he was really well. Just kind of kept the game simple, ran the floor really hard, rim to rim, got some easy transition opportunities, some weak side putbacks, catch and finishes. Sophomore Tyson Perkins, who I think is going to be really good for Westerville North this year. Younger brother of senior Ty Perkins. And then lastly, Tony Cornett. I want to give a shout out to this kid. He was a kid that I really got my eyes on in the spring during the live period. I got to see him down in Hamilton at one of the Under Armour events. He was playing 15U, right? And I thought this kid was just poised, right? He looked really young, but simultaneously had like these broad shoulders and long arms. He's a kid that when you look at him, he just kind of screams upside at you. Since then, since I saw him in May, Tony's kind of stretched out to 6'3" now. And I thought he did a really good job of just kind of playing off of Micah Young and Ty Perkins. And he had some bright flashes, man. Like the buckets were loud and they were often. So he's a kid to keep an eye on, not just this year, but throughout the spring and the summer as we get into AAU, and these guys start to pick up on their recruitment. I think Tony Cornett's a kid who could end up being a stock riser as we head into the spring here in a few months.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you mentioned, I definitely noticed his growth literally over the past few months. So definitely a name to watch on a team that we'll be watching. And now we're just going to quickly go through my top 10 rankings, and we're each going to pick one team to give a little extra breakdown on. TJ, should we start Division 1 or start at the smaller end, Division 7?
I say we start with the big guys. So here we go. Division 1. Here's Roth's preseason rankings, right? So he's got Olentangy Orange at 1, Toledo Whitmer at 2, Reynoldsburg at 3, St. Ignatius at 4, Cincinnati Moeller at 5, Delaware Hayes at 6, Massillon Jackson at 7, Cincinnati St. Xavier at 8, Lakota West at 9, and then lastly, another Cincinnati school in Princeton to round out the top 10. Um, and I feel like we say this almost every year, but man, Division 1 just feels just completely wide open. I think there are easily about 5 to 6 teams on this list that you can make a case for. But the team that I'm going with, and I know I'm going to sound like a front runner. Shout out to Coach Kalo, man, friend of the show. I like Olentangy Orange a lot, man. I think that just the urgency and the passion that this group plays with is very clear, especially if you watch their head coach for about 5 minutes, man. You want to talk about a basketball junkie, just a straight psycho and guy that loves basketball as much as me and Rob. Coach Kalo at Olentangy Orange, man, is one of the best. Maybe we'll get him on the show next week. We'll see if he can come on. But yeah, I think this is the year for Olentangy Orange. I think senior Devin Brown is one of the better high school players, not only in Central Ohio, but across the state. I think he just impacts games in so many ways. And then you look at just the surrounding cast with Levi Davis. Oh man, what's my guy's name, Roth, that I love? The
Trayton
kid goes
Schrader or Keegan Nupp?
Keegan Up, man. I would take 3 or 4 kids like Keegan Up on my team any day of the week, man. Just a guy, just flat out competitor, impacts the game in so many ways without scoring the ball. I think this is the year that Olentangy Orange gets it done.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll pick another team to spotlight, though. Not that I had them winning it all. I had them at number 7, but I think Massillon Jackson's going to be a team that you hear a lot about this year. Their senior trio of Mitch Finnefrock, Kyle Monterubio, and Cam Weekly. That's a group of guys who are very skilled, can shoot the cover off the basketball, and they have excellent chemistry playing a ton of games together. So Massillon Jackson is definitely a team I'm going to keep my eyes on in Division 1.
Don't tell Coach DeBevick that. Unfortunately, Coach DeBevick, love him to death. Not sure if Coach DeBevick watches the show or not. Maybe we'll have to get him on at some point throughout the season as well. But every year, man, he's a used car salesman, never fails. He calls me. It's some random day, usually like a Saturday morning in November, and tries to convince me that they're not very good. Um,
It'd be a miracle if they win a game this year.
Oh man, he tells me how much they suck and they're always hurt. One year he did this particularly, 2017. Yeah, and if we all remember we happened that year, they ended up winning the state championship in Division 1. So yeah, I don't listen to Coach DeBevick when he goes on these rants, but yeah, hopefully I'm sure when he hears this, he's going to give me a call, and I probably won't be ready for it, but we'll try.
All right, moving over to Division 2. My number 1 team was Lima Senior, number 2, Westerville North, number 3, city rivals Westerville Central, number 4, Big Walnut, number 5, New Albany, number 6, Toledo St. John's, number 7, North Canton Hoover, number 8, Cincinnati Winton Woods, number 9, Columbus Northland, and number 10, Toledo St. Francis. I went with Lima Senior here. I think they've got a great mix of a high-end talent. When you look at a guy like Sean Foster, transfer Willie Foster, who's one of the most athletic players in Ohio coming over from Lima Central Catholic. And then you look at a kid like Jaquel Cotton. He's finally healthy after he battled injuries throughout his junior year and throughout the grassroots season. He's committed to Detroit Mercy. And then maybe you look at a kid like Isaiah Wilson, who had a monster year on the gridiron as a wide receiver for Lima Senior. He's going to be another kid to watch. Also, Amari Addy is somebody who dealt with injuries last year. So it's a big if, but if those kids who dealt with so many injuries last year can stay healthy, there is no team that can match Lima Senior talent-wise in Division 2. TJ, I know you got somebody near the top of my list, but it's not the Spartans. I'm not sure what Coach Q is going to think about that.
No, Coach Q is my guy, man. Yeah, but I had to go with Westerville North. That's a team I'm really excited about. Obviously, what we just saw this past weekend down in Columbus, I thought they had just a dominant win, like we talked about. But a team that I want to spotlight, a team that not many people, particularly up in Cleveland or Columbus, are probably very familiar with. But shout out to North Canton Hoover and the Vikings, man. My guy, Coach Bluey, Coach Isaiah Elliott, two guys that I've known for almost 15 years at this point. They're a team they're not going to wow you, right? They don't have any big Division I guys on the team. They have seniors Crew Kane, Robert Oster, two sophomores I really like, and Hunter Hirschberger and Connor Newell. But the one thing that makes North Canton Hoover so tricky is that they run this stinking Princeton offense that everyone has trouble with. It's just, man, they are going to run 30, 45 seconds off the clock. They're going to really make you guard and stay disciplined. And man, they're just a very tough team to deal with, especially if you're not accustomed to seeing it. They are a team that I would not be shocked by any means if they made a late push in Division II. And they come from a always competitive federal league, right, with the likes of Canton McKinley, Glen Oak, Massillon Jackson, Perry Lake, all those guys, Uniontown Green. So this is a team that's going to be challenged during the season, not only in league play, but in their non-conference as well. And they just play such a unique brand of basketball that I think it's going to be very difficult for some teams that, like I mentioned, you're just not used to guarding 30, 40 seconds per possession.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I mean, I think statewide, the Federal League doesn't get as appreciated as how good a basketball that they play. So kind of funny that we both picked Federal League teams in Division I and Division II to shout out. But moving to Division III, this is a very interesting division. You got some Division I teams from last year and some Division II teams from last year. So starting at number one, I had Garfield Heights, number two, Louisville. Number three, Lutheran West, who we already mentioned earlier this episode. Number four, Toledo Central Catholic. Number five, another team we've already mentioned, Bishop Hartley from Columbus. Number six, Sandusky. Number seven, Akron St. Vincent St. Mary. Eight, Lima Shawnee. Nine, Lexington. And 10, Cincinnati Aiken. I went with my number one team, Garfield Heights. When you look at a guard like Marcus Johnson, he's just going to be able to score against pretty much any defense that goes at him. He had a fantastic season as a sophomore, and I expect even bigger things from him as a junior. But another team that I think people should keep their eyes on, I think Cincinnati Aiken is a group led by guards James Burnett and Jaden Arnold. They combined for 50 points in a win over Beaver Creek at the Ohio Valley Hoops Classic on Saturday. They're the defending Cincinnati Metro Athletic Conference champions. So keep your eyes out for Cincinnati Aiken this year. They were my number 10 team in Division III. Definitely have a shot to not only win a district, but potentially win a region, because if you notice, they're the only Southwest Ohio team in my Division III top 10.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Cincinnati Aiken with Jaden Arnold and James Burnett, not only one of the better backcourts in Cincinnati, but two seniors that I would put up against anybody in the state. I don't think either one of those guys have any back down, really tough, competitive, athletic guards who aren't going to wow you with their size or their strength, but just two guys that are really good with the ball, make things happen off the dribble. And then senior, I think this is going to be the X factor for them. A kid who me and Roth have been seeing since he was a freshman, sophomore. Always thought he had a ton of upside. It's just whether or not he can put it all together. And that's senior Tavon Smith. I think if that guy is rolling and he's being a grown man on the inside, using his just brute size and physicality, man, you get the three of those guys rolling, along with the other athletes that they have, man, I think Aiken has a real shot. But the team that I want to spotlight, who, in my opinion, no offense to Sonny, friend of the show, really good friend of mine. But man, I really like Louisville. I thought this was a team that last year, if they didn't have an injury, right? With Braden Gross, who I know suffered a really bad ankle sprain late in the tournament. Who knows what that team could have looked like and what could have happened there in March. But Louisville with Braden Gross back and Bo Siegfried running the show, two really underrated guys. Ashton Marshall, Tate Aljancic. I think Coach Siegfried finds a way to get it done. If these guys can stay healthy, I think they have a ton of seniors. They have a kid who I know you saw in the summer, Roth, you were really high on. Not sure how to pronounce his last name. I don't want to butcher it, but I believe his name is Avery.
Yep. Andrachik, I think.
Yep. So just another body, another tough kid who's going to buy into what Coach Siegfried is doing over there. Uh, it will be interesting. You kind of alluded to it a little bit, but man, as I'm looking at this list and there's not many disagreements from me, right, in regards to the order. I think you're splitting hairs when you're looking at these teams, but just a lot of Northeast Ohio, Northwest Ohio representatives. So just to see how this region is going to pan out, I think you could probably have 7 or 8 of the top 12 teams in Division Three all competing in the same region. So I'll be curious to see how it looks. For those of you who are familiar with how the high school football brackets go in Ohio, I think basketball is going to be following a very similar format in terms of the regions. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Lutheran West, another team that I think could easily make a run in this. Coach Duke, one of the better in-game coaches in Ohio. Sandusky, who just plays a just in-your-face brand of basketball. Toledo Central Catholic, who's got two no-brainer Division One guys. I mean, Division Three is loaded. I know there were some talks before the year. A lot of people were upset that they were in Division Three, and honestly wish that they would have been in D2 or D1. And as I'm looking at this list, I can't really say I blame them.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to follow in Division Three. Moving on to Division Four, we've got another couple Division Two schools. We saw some D2 powerhouses in Division Three. Division Four is where most of them lie. Defending state champs Kettering Alter, I got at number one. Number two, I got Cincinnati, Wyoming. Number three, Youngstown Ursuline. Number four, Akron Buchtel. Number five, Cleveland Glenville. Number six, Maysville. Number seven, Hawken. Number eight, Cincinnati Indian Hill. Number nine, Jonathan Alder. And number 10, Pomeroy Megs. I went with Kettering Alter. When you return a majority of your production from a state championship team, tough to pick against that. They got two seniors committed Division One, RJ Greer and Brady Connor, who could be one of the more improved players in the state this winter. And they also got a lot of size. Matt Lunny, Charlie Ewell, and they also grabbed a kid from Miami Trace, Grant Guest. So Kettering Alter just has a lot of talent. I know they started off the year with a very disappointing loss, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. Alter had a couple of bizarre games midway through the season last year and still ended up hoisting the trophy at UD Arena. So maybe they end up doing that again. Kettering Alter, my pick for Division Four.
So I didn't want to make this rant, especially not on the first show. Um, but man, the one thing that just to me, just the biggest gripe I have with the 7 division format that we moved to is teams no longer get that Final Four experience now. So state semifinal games, I believe, are going to be played at regional sites that are going to be announced at a later date. I'm assuming they're going to try and find something that makes sense for both teams involved, even though there were some very questionable choices in that regard on the football side of things. So hopefully we can get a little more parity and a little more, just kind of just do with basketball. Let's actually put some thought and some consideration into these locations when we pick them. But the fact that just teams aren't going to be able to say that they made the Final Four and get that trip to Dayton that everyone looks forward to. And the reason why I say that is the team that I want to highlight is Maysville. So this is a school that I don't even know if I can tell you where Maysville is on a map. I would have no clue at all. But I remember seeing them make the Final Four, right? They got a big win over, I think it was Bishop Hartley last year, correct?
Yeah, at the buzzer in the combo in Athens.
Yeah, senior Alex Bob hit a really big shot. I remember that. It was a team that I had heard, Roth and Stubbs mention in passing. And that actually ended up being my biggest takeaway from the state tournament last year was that Maysville Shelby game. I thought that was just an absolute blast. And it was probably my favorite game of the entire weekend. And it took place in the semifinals. So the fact that we're going to miss out on some of those experiences and some of those games like that. But I do want to give a shout out to Coach Dave Brown over at Maysville. They bring back two kids I really like, and Gator Nichols and Jordan Watson. And that team just plays a fun brand of basketball, man. Like if you just like modern day 5 out dribble drive, guys that can shoot it, that are going to share it, that are going to compete and play hard. Please get out to a Maysville game this year. But yeah, that's just my shout out. I hope Maysville makes another push, another run. Hopefully, I have the pleasure of watching these guys at some point throughout the season. Because man, that was just a lot of fun a year ago.
I believe Coach Brown had the Ohio high school record for either career or season free throw percentage. So I'm not surprised that his teams are very talented offensively. And I actually have been to what they call the power plant at Maysville for the
That's
Panthers.
actually uh, that's actually a really cool name. Speaking of cool names, we talked about this a little bit earlier, and I think it makes sense to bring it up now since we're talking about D4. Shout out to Coach Bink, aka Coach Burns over at Hawken, entering his first year at the job. They have, a duo of guards, right, and Gregory Pierce and Deron Hill. But I've been hearing rumblings about a kid and I just had to bring this up because I'm like, this got to be the coolest name I've ever heard. They have a freshman guard who is projected to be one of the better freshmen in Northeast Ohio, maybe even the state. Kid's name is Ice Taylor. If your name is Ice, you don't have no choice but to be cold. You just don't. So yeah, shout out to Coach Bink and those guys over there, man. I'm glad that he's got a group that he can be excited about, that we can be excited about. One of the more entertaining coaches in Northeast Ohio, one of the better Twitter follows. So if you're on Twitter or X, give Coach Burns a follow over there as well.
Absolutely. I second all of those thoughts. But moving to Division 5, my top team is Richmond Heights, number two, Harvest Prep, number three, Lutheran East, number four, Summit Country Day, who were not afraid to let me know that they already have a win over my number two team. Number five, Margaretta, number six, Columbus Academy, number seven, Minford, number eight, Columbus Afrocentric, number nine, Toledo Emmanuel Christian, and Stubbs accused me of being biased for my alma mater over his alma mater, but I went with Fairview at number 10. I am going with Richmond Heights to win the state title. It would be a first time in Ohio history that a school wins four state championships in a row. Would be an incredible accomplishment for that group of seniors, as Derek Barber, Dorian Jones, and Damaris Winters have never lost a playoff game in their careers so far. We'll see if they keep that streak going this season. I think they will, but there are a lot of roadblocks in Division 5 that they have to get through. And shout out to my alma mater, Fairview. You mentioned Maple Heights, I think, scored 100 at the Cleveland Heights Showcase. Fairview started their season with a 100-98 double overtime victory over Sheffield Brookside. So shout out the Warriors. Shout out Coach Barry, my high school coach. Maybe a little biased with them at number 10, but the Warriors are defending district champions in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, shout out to Coach Barry. They actually had two kids that I liked last year, both sophomores. I think it's Burke Lowry and Will Allen.
Yep.
Um, who I think will both be really good high school scorers, even more so this year than they were a year ago. We talked about Lutheran East, right, earlier in the show. I want to give a shout out to Cincinnati Summit Country Day. They were a team that I saw in June. They're coached by a really good friend of ours, Corey Albertson, who's an assistant over there. They have a lot to be excited about, though. Junior Tim Martin, who is really a trending name right now in the 2026 class, a kid who's really starting to figure it out, starting to realize how good he is and how good he can be. Junior LJ Stocks Whitford, who didn't play in the Harvest Prep game, but is one of the better guards in Southwest Ohio. Really good with the ball, shifty scorer. Caleb Walters, who I think is probably like the heart and soul of that group, right? Just a guy who's just going to flat out compete on both sides of the ball. And then, man, they have a kid that if you haven't seen him yet, I would advise getting out to Cincinnati Summit Country Day. They have a freshman named Max Joyner, about 6'4", 6'5". Doesn't look like a freshman by any means. He's got a very mature frame, long arms, and man, he's athletic, shoots the crap out of it. I believe he had 10 rebounds and 4 blocks in the win over Harvest Prep. So definitely that's going to be a fun group. Margaretta, a team that was one game away from the Final Four last year in Division III, they returned all but one player out of their top 8. Division 5 guys, honestly, I know we see Richmond Heights sitting there at the top, and rightfully so. Shout out to Coach Rogers and everybody on staff over there. But this might be a division that ends up being the most exciting. It's probably the division that I'm most excited to follow, right, throughout the year, especially when we get to the tournament and the postseason time. I think Afrocentric, right, we talked about them earlier. Minford, those guys have been itching. They're seniors now, right? They're ready to make a push. Emmanuel Christian out in Toledo, ton of young, intriguing athletes in the 26 and 27 classes. Harvest Prep, right, who's no stranger to Dayton or Columbus as far as the Final Four goes. It's going to be a fun one. Division 5 is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. And now it looks a little different moving into Division 6. I think there is a clear talent gap between Division 5 and Division 6. I went with Spencerville at number 1, Berlin Highland at number 2, Patrick Henry at number 3, Bluffton at number 4, Maumee Valley Country Day at number 5. My player of the week, Carter Coaster, comes from number 6, Toledo Christian. And then number 7 was my team of the week, Lima Central Catholic. Number 8, Coldwater. Number 9, Tri Village. And number 10, Marion Local. A couple MAC programs who are much more well known for their football success. Marion Local and Coldwater, I believe, both playing for football state championships in Canton this weekend. But they're two teams that are obviously going to get off to slow starts due to their schedule with their football team. But they're two teams to watch in Division 6. I went with Spencerville. You look at Will and Owen Sensabaugh. Those are two talented kids who I both got the opportunity to see for Northwest Ohio this summer on the grassroots circuit. And I think that Northwest Ohio, that region, is going to be an absolute gauntlet in Division 6. Whoever wins that region is going to have earned it. It could be a group of 6, 7 different teams, but I'm going to go with Spencerville to get through that region. And they were a team that people kind of slept on last season. They could have upset Ottawa Glandorf last year and kept the Titans out of the Final Four, but a late three-pointer sent Ottawa Glandorf back to Dayton. But I really think that Spencerville is a team that people are going to learn about this year.
You went with the number 1 team. I'm going to go with the number 2 team, man. And one thing I can say, ladies and gentlemen, is there's death, there's taxes, and then there's Berlin Highland finding a way to the Final Four, man. Shout out to Coach Schlabach and those guys over there. I think depth is a little bit of a concern, right? But it just seems like every year they have guys that just step up, guys that emerge out of nowhere. Last year there was a kid that I wasn't really familiar with, and I thought he was arguably their most valuable player down at the state tournament. And that was junior Nick Wigton, who is a senior this year. And I think he's going to have a really big year. He's going to, I mean, you look at how confident that kid was and how he scored it last year on the biggest stage, not only in the state semis, but in the state championship game as well. Found ways to get a shot off, really good pace and, good size and length at 6'3". So I think he's not going to have any issues kind of emerging into that number 1 option for Coach Schlabach. But yeah, man, give me Berlin Highland and senior Nick Wigton. So
And with the Hawks, what we have to remember, they had multiple senior starters get hurt last year and miss their playoff run, which forced juniors and sophomores to be inserted into the starting lineup. So a couple of their kids weren't getting a lot of minutes early in the year and weren't expected to be big pieces, but they ended up being big pieces for them during their last playoff push. So they're probably, those injuries probably make them a little bit more experienced than they were anticipating being heading into this year. And moving to Division 7, the small school powers at number one, I went with Rushi. Number two, Delphos St. John. Number three, Warren JFK. Shout out the Lost Files from Coach Kalmanak's episode. Number four, South Webster. Number five, Cornerstone Christian. And Quinn Kwasniak, as he will probably break every 3-point record in the OHSAA. Number six, Minster. Number seven, Jackson Center. Number eight, Tiffin Calvert. Number nine, Norwalk St. Paul. And number 10, Northside Christian. I think this is the year that Rushi gets over the hump. You look at their experience; they've got a couple guys with size coming back. Benjamin York might be their most talented guy. Dominic Francis, I believe, is a Marshall baseball commit who's going to be back. I think this is the year that they get it done, and I'm actually debating about going to see Rushi in person next Tuesday. Got to figure out where I'm going with my schedule. Nothing set in stone, but they are going to host Botkins next Tuesday, and I'm considering making a trip to Rushi, Ohio, something I never thought I would ever say in my life.
Man, yeah, you took my highlighted team. I was probably going to talk about Rushi as well. I think that team, we mentioned it last year a ton. They just have a really great story. And I do think this is probably the year they get over the hump. Shout out to Coach K over at Warren JFK. We actually shot a really good episode with him last year. And then, yeah, it just disappeared into the cloud. We weren't able to post anything that week. So I feel like it's only right we get Coach K back on the show at some point this year. Allow him to give us some redemption. Um, I think a potential regional final with Warren JFK and Cornerstone Christian would be about as fun as it gets in D7. Two groups who led by two really good seniors, Nick Ryan and JFK, and Turtle Kwasniak over at Cornerstone Christian. And also, while we're talking about Cornerstone Christian, quick shout out, man, to Ted Kwasniak, aka the big guy, aka one of the nicest dudes that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. He passed away. He was on the bench, I believe, for every single one of VASJ state championships, even back in the 90s and then throughout the 2000s. Man, just a guy who made you feel more important than you probably have ever felt in your life. Treated me and my family with nothing but respect. Never met anyone who had a bad thing to say about him. And if you were at his service last, I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday, you were just able to see what kind of difference and impact that guy made, not only on the basketball community, but just on people in general. And whatever we got to do, I don't care what it is, however much money we got to put up, let's get Coach Quaz, man, in the Ohio High School Coaches Hall of Fame. Please. Not only am I just saying that because of what happened, but that guy deserved it, man. Absolute legend who was a legend both on the floor and off it. Rest in peace. And shout out to his son, Babe Kwasniak, friend of the show, friend in our hearts, unfortunately. So, yeah, D7 should be interesting. And with that being said, this is a topic of the show portion that Mike Roth came up with last year, I believe, and something that you guys seem to like. And it's nice to just hear, some familiar faces, some guys that a lot of our fans or listeners may have forgotten about or just wondered where they were playing at these days. And that's the Alumni Spotlight. So what we like to do with this, guys, just a quick reminder. We like to spotlight a former Ohio player who is currently either playing, Division I, Division II, Division III, or NAIA basketball anywhere in the country. As long as they're from Ohio, we like to, give them a bone, show them some love. Division One, I went with Dior Connors at Pick North. Anyone who knows Dior Connors, man, as a freshman and sophomore, was one of the better underclassmen, not only in Central Ohio but Ohio in general. Had a kind of up and down junior senior year. Was hurt a lot. I believe he ended up going the JUCO route and ended up at App State. And man, he hit the game-winning three-pointer with less than a second left against William and Mary. Made 5 threes in the win. And I know we hear the cliche, you have to bet on yourself. But shout out to Dior, man. The kid had a very unorthodox journey to get to Division One, and not only did he get there, but he got there, and he's playing well. So shout out to Dior Connors.
Absolutely. He was a kid who I didn't get to see as a freshman or sophomore when he was very highly regarded. Only got to see him as a junior and senior when he was sort of coming back from some injuries. So, long journey for him, but well worth it based on what he's doing this year. My Division One player of the week, Devin Royal. He had his first career double-double with 20 points and 12 rebounds in a 50-point Buckeye win over Evansville. And he also got his first college start in a 44-point win over Campbell, going for 17 points and 8 rebounds. Shout out Devin Royal, state champion for Pickerington Central. And a little shout out to our former third co-host, Kurt Stubbs, who I know would give his stamp of approval on a former Pickerington Central player being my Alumni Spotlight Player of the Week. TJ, who is your small college player of the week?
Yeah, it's not a Drive to Dayton podcast, right, without giving Pick Central some love, whether Stubbs is here or not. For the small college spotlight, this is one that is kind of near and dear to my heart a little bit. This was a kid that a good friend, Corey Albertson, first told me about. This was, God, maybe 2020, 2021. He was telling me there was a kid named Colin Tolbert out of Cincinnati who was really tough, could flat out score the ball. And I thought the exact same thing when I saw him. He was a kid that I personally was really, really high on throughout the year. A kid who committed to Concord in West Virginia really late into his senior year. I know Coach May was excited about him, but Colin went on to score 58 points, guys. I'm going to repeat that. He went on to score 58 points in a double overtime loss against Charleston. But then he turned around and got the most important thing, which was a win against West Virginia State, scored 25 points, gave Coach May and Concord their first win of the season. But it's just nice to see a kid that, you're really high on. Maybe others don't quite see it the same way you do. And then you get to see that kid, do well. So awesome. Shout out to Colin Tolbert. Shout out to Coach May over at Concord.
Yeah, Colin had a great senior year for Coach Wyrick over at Cincinnati Fairfield. And he's a guy that I know me and you were both texting college coaches about. Glad he found a fit at Concord and he's doing really well over there. My small college player of the week is Ricky Radke. I actually went and saw Denison get a comfortable victory over Capital. Radke is averaging 14.7 points per game and 9.0 rebounds per game for 3-0 Denison. Denison has had a fantastic start to the year. They're looking to make some school history this year under Coach Sullivan. My guy, Coach Quinn, is an assistant there as well. Just shout out Denison. They run a high level program, a lot of familiar faces from all across Ohio. They have kids from the Cleveland area, Columbus area, Dayton area. It doesn't matter. They have a lot of in-state kids, a couple out of region kids as well, but they do a really nice job of getting high academic in-state talent. And I'm not sure they have any more talented player on their roster than Ricky Radke, a university school graduate up in Northeast Ohio. So shout out Denison, shout out Ricky Radke. And I believe that will wrap up episode 1 of the Drive Dayton. TJ, you have any closing remarks?
Man, we can't leave without making our quick state champion predictions. So just going to kind of run through these really quick. Don't want to keep you guys any longer than we already have. In Division One, I went with Olentangy Orange. I think Coach Kalo and those guys find a way. Division Two, I'm going with Westerville North. I think guards win games. I think seniors win games. Westerville North has both. Division Three, I went with Louisville. Coach Siegfried and company, right? I think they had an unfortunate end to the season last year. I think those guys bounce back. Braden Gross is one of the more underrated kids in Ohio. Kettering Alter in Division Four, I think they repeat. I just think they're too big, too long, too smart. I think Coach Eric Coulter just does such a really good job, runs a lot of great stuff. They're a difficult matchup, especially when they go to that big zone. Division Five, man, we don't agree here, Roth. But I'm going with Lutheran East. I think Lutheran East Richmond Heights Division 5 regional final could be one of the better games of the entire postseason.
I've already
Um,
heard about it from Coach Jones. You don't have to. We don't have to keep bringing it up.
but give
Last
me,
year I was on their side too. You and Stubbs both went with OG. I was riding with Lutheran East, and now this year you're riding with Lutheran East, and I'm riding with Richmond Heights. So it's interesting that we got a role reversal. Last year I was Coach Jones's favorite Drive to Dayton co-host out of the three of us, and this year I am on the most wanted sign. I'm pretty sure he told me that they printed out my graphic that had Lutheran East at number 3 in Division 5 to show it to all the kids. So if I can
yeah. So
ever,
hopefully we get enough pressure, man, from the Lutheran East fan base and get Roth on the hot seat, man. Maybe I can have Coach Liggins as a new co-host or something. Maybe I'll get some free haircuts out of it. Shout out to John Liggins up there in Cleveland. Division 6, I mentioned it earlier, man. I went with Berlin Highland. In Division 7, I went with Rushi.
and then you guys kind of got my picks. It was all my number 1 teams from the rankings. Division 1, Olentangy Orange. Division 2, Lima Senior. Division 3, Garfield Heights. Division 4, Kettering Alter. Division 5, Richmond Heights. Division 6, Spencerville. And Division 7, Rushi. And that will wrap it up for the first episode of the Drive to Dayton. Make sure you tweet at us any questions you want us to answer in the next episode. We'll be doing weekly shows throughout the Ohio high school basketball season. Really excited to get back into the swing of things and excited for the winter. A lot of games to come. We had a great opening weekend, a little slower week coming here, but before too long, we'll be having some more big time events across the state that we will both be at. But thanks so much for listening to episode 1.
See you guys next week.